For the past 10 years across social media, the Untitled Nerd Network has covered it all. From politics and strife to comic books, movies, music, and everything in between. And to talk about it today, oh, sorry, buddy, I don't have any spare change. Oh, no, that's Lonnie Henderson, actually, the man behind the magic at the Untitled Nerd Network. Here for a 10th anniversary interview. Nervous?
Not really.
Good.
I've done this so long.
Okay. Well, doing it so long is kind of the point of why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
To recap some of the history and maybe share some behind-the-scenes stories that didn't make their way to Facebook. How many times, by the way, have you been shadow banned on that page?
Oh, man. Like maybe half a dozen times, at least.
The internet's most wanted. Let's take it back to the start.
Yeah.
So at first, the Untitled Nerd Network was supposed to have a title, right?
Well, we were Untitled Nerd Podcast to begin with. You know, it's been so long, I barely remember even why. I think it was just because we considered so many different names for the channel, nothing sounded right, and then just as kind of a joke, I was like, well, let's just call it the Untitled Nerd Podcast, and it stuck. And like, that was the best. But every time we're out and about, we're at events, things like that, people think that we're United Nerd Network, and I'm like, no, Untitled. Let's look at the sign. It's there in plain English.
Sure. Well, the difference between Untitled and United is actually something that maybe makes a lot of sense to talk about too, because nerd fandoms are anything but united.
Yep.
What do you think is the most ridiculous thing over a decade now that you've seen people arguing about on the page?
Man, I don't know, man. Like, there's so much stuff. Like, just so much stuff. I don't really have a specific one, but I feel like a lot of what happens is just nobody agrees about anything. And the nerd community, whether it be anime, Rick and Morty, I've seen people argue about like My Little Pony. I've seen people argue about X-Men. But probably, I would say probably the biggest thing is you have a lot of people who look at cartoons like the X-Men and a lot of like their social justice messages, and they're like, oh, that has nothing to do with social justice. That's crazy. And that's been the name of the game for 60 years now.
Sure.
So.
And worth pointing out as well, Untitled Nerd Network leans pretty much exclusively to the left on these issues, correct?
About 98%, yes.
I'm curious, over the years, when you started it as a group of folks, and it has whittled down a little bit over the years, did that ever come up as something where people in the group may have said, no, we should stay out of politics? Or was everybody in pretty much lockstep about, speaking your mind on those types of things, the type of stuff that gets you shadow banned?
When we first started, May 4th, 2014, or 2015, it was me, two friends from work, and it was just a deal where we were like, oh, we chit-chat at work all the time, we might as well just make a podcast out of it. I don't, anybody that I've previously had experience with in the channel or whatever, if they're no longer with us, I don't name people by names. I'm not one to like talk badly about people or anything. Mm-hmm. The thing that happened at the beginning, me and two other guys did it. And it was like, I had the passion for it. I was wanting to get in there and do some stuff. They really didn't care. It was just kind of a hobby thing for them. They really didn't have a lot of drive and desire to really even see the page go anywhere. But yeah, when I first started kind of leaning into like left-leaning politics and social justice and stuff, there was a lot of blowback. There was a lot of blowback, and that's a huge reason why I ended up going off on my own and doing it. So that was 100% the reason why we are where we are now, is because there was a lot of disagreement early on as to the direction of the page.
Sure. But in addition to disagreement, probably things that did unite people. It's not the United Nerd Network, but things that did bring folks together. What moments throughout the last 10 years of running the page and doing streams and everything else that's gone on have you really looked back at and said, no, that was special because people actually came together for something? Is there a moment that jumps out?
The biggest moment in UNN history was in 2020, and I actually had a health issue. Had insurance and everything, but the doctor was like, nope, despite insurance, you're going to need like $3,000 up front to pay for this operation that you need.
Be like that, yes.
And that was my ear operation.
Yep.
And we had so many people. We set up a GoFundMe just hoping to get a few $100s to help, and we ended up meeting goal because people like what we do, they like what we stand for, and there were people from like Europe saying, "Hey, we're sorry you have to deal with that, cluster of a healthcare system."
Okay.
And I was having people from Europe send us $200 and $300 at a time. And that was when I realized we've made a difference. People are willing to drop that kind of money towards you to help, and that means that you've accomplished something good.
Definitely. One of the highlights that maybe it's worth mentioning, by the way, that Lonnie and I know each other, actually, and we've known each other for a long time. I've been on some of your video game streams.
A few of them, yeah. That was one of the first times we ever got together in person.
That's right.
We got together and played Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on the Switch.
Played a lot of Warzone together
Yep.
throughout the pandemic, played some Fortnite as well, and, by the way, broke my back carrying you in all of those games.
Okay.
But nonetheless, as running this page, being involved with video games, being involved with streaming, has it made you a better gamer by any chance?
Maybe just a little bit, but no,
Okay.
It hasn't. I still have the same skill level I did 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Has it made you a better critic of film and television?
Ooh. Maybe, because now I look for different things. Once you've accumulated so much knowledge of this stuff and so much experience watching these things, yeah, I mean, absolutely, because then you have to start looking for the details, like, well, why is this show or movie an 8.5, but this other one's an 8?
Sure.
So you do have to start kind of paying attention to the details there. So yeah, I think it may not have made me a better gamer, but I feel like I'm probably a better movie critic at this point. I might not always have the opinions that align with the other common people, but
Sure.
But no, I think that it's helped.
Okay.
Substantially.
So it's been a vehicle for growth in some ways, shapes, and forms. Let's talk about growth in terms of followers, because the page is up to what now? Is it over? It just got over a milestone.
We're just a little bit over 202,000 at this point followers. Yeah.
Not bad. What was the moment where you maybe came to grips with the idea that this page was actually going to be big? Because a lot of people do a page that maybe has 1,200 people on it. When did you realize this had 6-figure plus follower potential?
Well, we had just crossed, I think, maybe 10 or 20,000 followers. Amber posted a meme on the page, like on a Monday or Tuesday morning or something, just random. She posted it, and it was it had a picture of the Toy Story dinosaur, and it was like me when I clock into work. And then it's like me after dealing with customers and staff in the next photo, and it was the T-Rex from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
That thing pulled like 90,000 reactions, and our page right up through the roof. Like within a couple of months, we were over 100,000. COVID did kind of mellow things out a little bit, but over the last couple of years we've started that uphill climb again, and just a couple of months ago, right before the end of the year in 2024, we hit the 200,000 mark. So it's great, which is interesting because despite having 200,000 fans, our reach is less now than it was when we had 10,000. Thanks, Facebook.
Facebook will do that to you for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those parts of the operation where in the past, I've never run a meme page, but I've run social media accounts for other employers and things like that. There's a lot more that goes into it than what people realize sometimes.
Yes.
So we've talked about the highlights and we've talked about the lowlights. Why don't we do the mundane, right in the middle there? What does an average day's worth of content on UNN come from?
Well, we mostly share memes that we see out and about in the wild. I typically keep track of like Newsarama, comicbookresources.com, just pretty much anything that covers nerd news, once something hits. Probably the biggest thing that I've noticed gets a lot of people involved is celebrity deaths.
Sure.
Adam West was a big one. Stan Lee passed away just a couple of years after the channel.
James Earl Jones, too.
Yeah, James Earl Jones. We've lost so many people in the nerd community that actors, actresses that we've grown up with. Like, dang, I'm sure there's people that you grew up with watching that are dead now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's time marches on, I guess. But yeah, I mean, we get our stuff from a variety of places.
Right.
It's funny because some of the stuff that is the most popular, something will just take off out of nowhere, and I have no clue. I wasn't thinking when I posted that, hey, this is gonna explode. But no, it's usually just some random picture, some random meme, and you just never think about it, and the next thing you look and it's in like 5-digit reactions, and you're like, whoa, okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Stan Lee, and one of the highlights of running that page over the years means that you get to meet your idols if you get up above a certain level of fame.
Yeah.
And throughout your UNN career, you had the chance to meet Stan Lee, and we'll ask about that in a second.
Interestingly enough, Stan Lee was about 6 months before the channel was created.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
But you've had the chance to meet him. You had the chance to interview one of your favorite singers from the band Crash Test Dummies. You've had the chance to interact with a lot of different content creators and a variety of sort of places, and content creator being used very widely. It can be a cosplayer who's just putting stuff up online, or it can be a musician who's creating that kind of content for people to enjoy. Who was your favorite to talk to in a business capacity?
Oh, Brad Roberts.
Yeah?
I mean, I was a fan, first and foremost.
That's the Crash Test Dummies guy, by the way.
Yeah, lead singer, Crash Test Dummies. Me and my mom were both super fans of that band through the early to mid-90s. And then, my mom actually passed away about 6 months before the channel happened. So she never had an opportunity to see what we're doing.
Yeah.
But she was a big supporter of my stuff, and probably a pretty big reason why I got this rolling. Because I was in that 6-month period after my mom passed, and I was looking for some creative outlet, and that happened. And sure enough, once we got to a certain audience level, certain followership, it started becoming a lot easier to get those interviews.
Yep.
And people that I would have never in a million years thought I would have ever gotten an opportunity to talk to. Like Brad Roberts, we went up to Charleston, West Virginia, talked to him for about 30 minutes, and then because that wasn't a full proper concert, it was like a 3-song set as part of the Mountain Stage program. He was like, hey, we're in Atlanta next month, come down, be our guest, hang out with us backstage, free tickets. And we went, and that was one of the best experiences of my entire life.
Sure,
like,
of course.
Easily.
Yep. Now, in my background, I've interviewed a lot of people. I also have least favorites. Who sucked?
I don't want to name names. I've got a couple.
Can you drop a hint? Can you tell me what they did and not do a name?
I have 2 of them.
Excellent.
One, it was a man who worked in the adult entertainment industry a few years ago, and I was able to ask him a total of about 2 questions over an hour-long interview.
Oh, that's a tough one. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's one. What's the other?
The other one was a lot more recent, since we've started going to cons again since after COVID. I'm not going to say who, but he's I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Well, but anyway, this was somebody that I had seen on TV. I had seen at least one of this person's movies. They had been in cameo appearances in other movies. And when I went to talk to this particular person, they were doing interviews for everybody all weekend, but because we were filming with like a smartphone and didn't have all the fancy equipment and the microphones and all that stuff, the dude wanted absolutely nothing to do with us and just kind of blew us off.
Wow.
And so I'm not going to say that individual was particularly a hero of mine, but I actually expected a little bit better of an experience there.
Sure. Now, the con scene. You've been to a couple of different conventions and nerd get-togethers. There's an intersection between what occurs online and what occurs in person. How do you figure out, maybe, how to present yourself both online and in real life when you're doing something like this?
Be professional and don't be a dick.
Good answer.
It is as simple as that. Like, just be professional. Don't use a bunch of shorthand gibberish when you're trying to communicate with somebody. Send a proper, good etiquette email. But that's the thing. You've got to be ready for failure.
Yep.
Because for every one interview I've gotten, I've had like 7 or 8 people say no, or just not even reply.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's the biggest advice I can give to somebody is just work hard. Like if you want to do like what I'm doing, work hard at it and be nice.
Sure.
Like politeness goes a long way. Manners.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Well, let's wrap up the celebrity part of this conversation by going back to that name I dropped earlier. We were, of course, going to ask about Stan Lee, because there's nobody, and probably will not be again, anybody with more influence in what he did in the superhero genre, in the Marvel genre, in the Marvel movies, and everything that rips it off and everything that reboots and comes back. Stan Lee has his hands in probably trillions of dollars worth of well-loved media.
Oh, the man has the GDP of like a small country,
So what was it like to meet God?
It was as uneventful as it was. It was amazing.
Sure.
Because I got to meet him actually twice, technically. First time, I walked up, handed him a comic book, he signed it, and then I was on my way. The second time was the photo op.
Right.
And it just so happened that as I walked up my place in line, I went, stood next to him, was like, ah! And about the time I posed, the lady was like, oh, hold on, I've got to change the battery out in the camera or something. And so I got to stand there for about 3 minutes next to Stan Lee. Now, I didn't have the balls to say anything to him, really, but I was just like, hey, this is kind of cool. And he just kind of like smiled at me and nodded, and that was it. Like, I was like, what do I say to this man?
Right.
Like, without sounding like an absolute just fangirling it up. Like,
Sure.
oh, Stan Lee!
Was that the only time you were starstruck?
No.
No. Who else left you speechless?
Brad Roberts.
Okay.
If I didn't have to interview him, I would have just been giddy.
Yep.
The other one, who else? I'm gonna sound absolutely horrible for saying this, but I can't recall his name right off the top of my head.
Oh boy.
But he was the man who played, he was the voice of Rocco on Rocco's Modern Life. He was the voice of the Taco Bell Chihuahua. And he also was Officer Garcia in Reno 911. And I've written his name 1,000 times. I've known it, but for some reason right now I'm drawing a blank.
A camera on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Precisely.
I gotta say, I don't know the name off the top of my head either, so drop it in the comments of this video and somebody will disagree.
Well, to be fair, I was forgetting his name during the interview.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew it, but he has like kind of a longer name, a Hispanic name, and I was having a hard time like knowing exactly which way to pronounce it.
Sure.
But, he helped me out, so that worked.
Well, you've opened Pandora's box of something that I actually was on the fence about talking about.
Okay.
But let's do this. When people think about nerd culture, they usually picture a couple of very specific things. Usually they don't picture a shower. No, just kidding.
No, you're right, though. The
No,
general
you're right.
public is like, ugh.
I got this one, yeah. What they do picture, though, is usually metropolitan and big city and access to some of the big events that come through the larger Comic-Cons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, New York, or the legendary San Diego Comic-Con, or even the one in Boston that I've been to once or twice. Running this page out of the outskirts of Chattanooga, Tennessee, also brings an interesting perspective, because we know Southern nerds exist, watching the video, standing right here, but it's not what people think of. You know, when you're talking about maybe working your way through a name that doesn't roll off the tongue so naturally based on maybe an accent or a background, that translates as well into how you watch films, into how you post memes, into how you interact with your followers. Is there anything uniquely Southern about UNN?
We're so out of place, man.
Yeah.
We are so out of place because people hear me, like, you know, people are like, oh, he sounds like Hank Hill from King of the Hill. And people hear me talk, they see my look, everything, and people do not expect to get what they're getting when they first see me. And then I open up my mouth and start talking, and they're like, I really wasn't expecting that subject matter to come out of that body. So, yeah, I get it. It is, people, usually when you see a nerd, per se, portrayed in popular media, they are not Southern at all. Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually seen a Southern nerd, Southern geek portrayed in pop culture. It's weird.
Yeah, maybe
I really don't think I've ever seen it.
It's a good point, actually. I'm sure there's some titles out there that include something like that.
Call me Hollywood.
Yeah, right? Holler at your boy.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting perspective to be that fish out of water, because you are, in so many ways, a product of where you come from, and then in so many other ways, going so far away for the content that you're actually craving. It's interesting. You have to draw things in rather than experience it locally. Well, let's do something that I think I'm pretty proud of, and that is I've added fandoms to your list of interests.
Yes.
And I know running the page over the years has added interests and fandoms to what you actually enjoy. When you started the page, certain things you weren't into, certain shows weren't out yet. Let's talk about the evolution of not only what the page posts as an extension of yourself, but also the evolution of what you've been watching over the years. Is it night and day, maybe from 10 years back?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, back in 2015, when we started UNN, Disney Plus didn't exist. Let's see, 2015, that was probably right smack dab in the middle of like phase 2 of the MCU, and they're about to wrap phase 5 this summer. Yeah, we were big on The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones. Those were like our 2 big ones. But since then, we've had The Mandalorian, Star Wars stuff, a lot of new Marvel stuff. Man, there's been so much stuff released that we have kind of, since COVID, gotten away from reviewing things because there's just so much content. It's a great time to be alive as a nerd, because I grew up in the early 90s and mid 90s where you were lucky to get like maybe a made-for-TV, cheaply made Marvel movie. I think maybe 3 of those released in all the 90s, but that was what we had.
Sure, and now they're the chart topper, biggest movies in the world every time.
You used to catch hell for having these interests, and now it's mainstream.
It is. And that's almost certainly changed the page as it goes on. Maybe there's a little bit less of trying to find a specific community and more of you appeal to the masses in a way that you probably couldn't imagine a decade ago.
More so. I don't think...
Maybe not the masses, but almost everybody.
It's a lot bigger
With a
group.
few notable exceptions have seen a Marvel movie.
Yeah, you've never seen a Marvel movie.
I have not. I have, however, seen a lot of Godzilla movies, And
Yes.
that's the fandom that I turned you on to. So I do want to mention as well the rise in both interest and acceptance of foreign film and TV over the last 10 years. Even putting a Studio Ghibli meme up on your page might have had some folks being like, what is this?
Yeah.
Nowadays, you can't get away from Japanese and Korean creations in the nerd culture. So what do you think is next in terms of the intersection between American and international interests? You know, where do you see anime going? Where do you see films like Parasite that are winning awards going? Will there be more? Will there be less?
I think as long as the U.S. continues its current track as far as like, I mean, I like a lot of the stuff that's coming out now, but as a whole, the entertainment industry in the States is spotty at best. And I think until they develop a Western renaissance
Yeah.
and start coming up with some original ideas and stuff like that, there's only so much that, you know, reboots and remakes are going to do. We're getting to burnout. You're starting to see it. But I think as long as America, or just the West in general, keeps on the path that we're going without any changes, I think the sky's the limit for foreign media. Because I will say 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been caught dead watching a foreign film. I really wouldn't have been.
Right.
Now I'm into Godzilla, the new animated movie Flow about the cat. That is, in my opinion, like the best film, I think, of 2024. I think it was a late 2024 film.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, you know, you've got Godzilla now winning an Oscar for special effects. Flow won Best Animated Feature. I think it was Best International or something like that.
Still won something though.
It won an Oscar. And I think that right now, the Eastern Hemisphere is hands down putting out better content than what we are here at home.
Yeah.
And I think it just everything in general, no specific thing, but you've got so many original ideas coming out that, hey, bring it. Because right now, I don't really care if we're getting good stuff in America or not, because I'm getting it elsewhere.
Right.
So it's coming from somewhere, as long as, you know, like, there's no telling what 100% tariffs on foreign movies are going to do.
Sure. And see, this is what we were talking about earlier as well. Not going to shy away from maybe the conversation there too.
Yeah.
For the record, Untitled Nerd Network, not a fan of tariffs.
No, not really. Anything that causes my hobbies to cost more, I'm gonna.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
I'll go on record as saying that.
Of course. Well, as journalism continues happening here in this room, I'm going to ask you some who, what, when, where, and why questions. And it's going to be a little bit basic, but I think it's good background info. When it comes to UNN, who comprises the team?
Oh, I'm so happy you asked that. Right now, pretty much is just myself and my partner Amber. And we have been running it pretty much by ourselves since about 2018. So the better part of the last 7 years, there was actually a time right around COVID that, yeah, I was making the occasional video and things, but Amber was the one running the page.
Yep.
Like if you saw a meme, or, you know, we schedule things every day at 8 a.m., 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m., 8 p.m., and 11 p.m. So that's like scheduled. You're going to get that content from UNN every single day.
Yep.
And Amber is the one who even still posts and schedules and, you know, just works on about 90% of that. And I come in and kind of fill in the blanks. But yeah, I would be totally remiss to not just sing Amber's praises during this interview, because yeah, she's not here. We're kind of doing our own thing in Missouri right now, out of town, and Amber didn't want to come along.
Amber's got a real job.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just basically myself and Amber. We've had some other people who have kind of helped out. Like we had a deal where whenever we did a cosplayer of the year, we would give the cosplayer who won Cosplayer of the Year, like, not really mod privileges, but like editor privileges on the page so that they could post their own stuff. We're like, hey, you're our Cosplayer of the Year, post your stuff whenever you want.
Yep.
And so that's kind of been a thing. We've had some other friends here and there locally who have kind of been a part of it, you know, just kind of helping out. I've had co-hosts for like little talk shows that we've done and things. But, you know, people come and go, but Amber and I are forever.
Definitely. So that's who.
Yep.
We'll go to who, what, in that sequence of questions. What in the year 2025 does UNN stand for?
Equality. DEI.
Oh boy.
UNN, the first
in this comment section.
Yeah, UNN, the first ever DEI nerd page. But yeah, I mean that is we basically stand for that everybody in the nerd community, well, everybody in general, but everybody should be accepted for who they are, what they do. If you're not hurting anybody, live your life the way you want. And that's the basic tenets of UNN.
Gotcha.
Like really nothing further beyond that. You know, we promote all that, and then we get rid of the people who are against that. And we don't do a lot of infighting. We don't let people get in there and run their mouths, and we pride ourselves on being a safe space for those like us.
Okay. Yeah. Who, what, when. We already covered the origin, and we covered some of the highlights throughout the years. So let me ask you this. When, if ever, would you want to hang up the cleats on UNN?
I'd probably the day Facebook goes under.
That could be a while from now.
Yeah.
So this is for the rest of your life, you think?
I don't ever see me stopping this. I would have to. I almost feel like even if something big were to happen to me in a positive sense, and I were to come into wealth, or I ended up doing some other like project or something big, I feel like I'd still find time for UNN. And I know even if I didn't, Amber would.
Right.
And I think UNN's always going to be here. Like I don't want to like speak this out loud, but I think that if we were to get hit by some BS violation on Facebook and lose our page outright, I don't know if I would have the motivation and desire to start all over again, especially in the current environment of how hard it is to grow.
Sure.
That's probably the only thing that would do it, is I would just be distraught and fed up to the point where I just didn't want to start it again.
Sure. Makes sense. The next question for a reporter to get into would be where, which is a little bit of a difficult one maybe to work in with the conversation that we've had, which includes already you're outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. You've been here, you've been there, you've been to these cons. We've covered a lot of the where. So let me ask something else for the future then. Where else would you like to see the Untitled Nerd Network take you?
Again, the sky's the limit, man. I would love to eventually have the opportunity to travel around the country and attend cons. Like, we're kind of stuck budget-wise in like the Southeast.
Yeah.
We've attended cons in Nashville, Chattanooga, just various places. And I would like to go to some of the big shows. You know, if we were ever to be invited as guests and maybe had our, you know, stuff at least partially paid for, you know. Yeah, I would love to go to like San Diego Comic-Con, New York, maybe go to, you know, some of the big events. Because even the event landscape has changed drastically since we've been on. Like our first huge event was Wizard World Nashville, and Wizard World isn't even technically a brand anymore. They do cons through like other companies. They're still technically there, but there's not a Wizard World Con anymore. So yeah, the convention scene in general has changed so much over the last 10 years, and a lot of that's due to COVID.
Of course.
You know,
Of course.
there's a lot of shows now that don't even exist anymore.
Right. Everything's changed.
Yeah, everything's changed.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because the first half of UNN was before COVID.
Yes.
Second half is after COVID.
That's
so we have
true.
like a pre-UN or pre-COVID, post-COVID. That's crazy.
Back in the before times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. The last question for a reporter to ask would be why, but instead I'm going to ask you, why not we play a little game?
Okay.
Would you like to play a game?
I'm afraid to say yes, but yeah, let's do it.
I'm going to do a round of word association with you, where I will bring up maybe one of your favorite titles, or shows, or even actors, or other things related to the UNN journey and the content which you create. Can you just tell me the first word that comes to mind?
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Okay, let's start with one of your favorites. Rick and Morty. One word.
Hilarious.
Yes. Walking Dead.
Ooh. Difficult. It was
That's the word?
It was so good for so long.
Yeah. Oh,
and I still like The Walking Dead. I love the comics, but it's been difficult since the main show ended to get into the other stuff.
Makes sense.
That was a lot more than one word, but there you go.
Yeah, that was a lot more than one word. We'll try to dial it back to, again, no words association, right?
I felt like I had to explain it.
Association.
Yeah.
You did have to explain that one, to be fair, because I didn't get it at first. Moving through titles. Star Wars.
Overrated.
Star Trek.
Fun.
I was really hoping you'd say better.
No.
That's just my opinion.
I like both of those.
Uh-huh.
I think that a lot of people I like Star Wars.
Mhm.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting Star Wars,
Sure.
but I think that a lot of people give that series a lot more, I don't really know what to call it, but a lot more credit than it really, I mean, it was good in the 70s and early 80s. Everything else now, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the old writers from back when just, at a certain point in the 80s or early 90s, they lost it.
Okay.
You know?
By the way, this guy literally started his channel on May the 4th, and he's telling you on camera that Star Wars is overrated.
Maybe we could have that last comment stricken from the record.
And cut! Let's keep our word association going, okay?
I got you.
Let me give you some classic characters throughout history.
Okay.
One word. Clint Eastwood.
Horrible.
John Wayne.
Unknown. Know nothing about him, really.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Okay. Humphrey Bogart. How back can we go before you just totally don't know who I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with Humphrey Bogart, but I couldn't pick him out of the lineup.
Man. What about Lon Chaney? You don't even know Lon Chaney?
I've heard-
Classic 30s, 40s B horror movies.
You're digging back
I know,
into...
I'm digging back. Okay. But I am uncovering something here.
Okay.
And that is that UNN is a product of its times.
Yes.
It's not a historical resource. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take it back to the future then. What do you think about that movie?
Amazing.
Yeah.
The first one and the second one.
Sure, of course. Now let me give you some terms. Let me give you some things that aren't titles. It's just stuff related to what you do.
Okay.
Again, one word association.
Okay, I'll stick to it.
Facebook. One word.
Oversized.
Okay. Call of Duty.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. That's it. That's,
I don't know if you played the same Call of Duty I played.
well, just in general, a positive vibe.
Okay. Okay. Meme pages.
Mixed.
Yeah.
Because,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'll just leave it at that.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, let's see. Again, going through things that you have experienced. Celebrity interviews. One word.
Entertaining.
What about final day of a con?
Beat.
Yes. Yes. Brand new comic book.
Wonderful. I was trying to come up with a good smell.
Sure,
that's what
sure.
I
Because
noticed.
that's, when you open a book, for sure. What about a store display full of Funko Pops? First word.
Crowded.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. That's real.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We saw one of those earlier, actually.
We did, actually, yes. Why it's coming to my mind, too. Yeah. It's pretty easy to kind of put into words, the associations between all these different things, from a favorite character to an actor
Yeah.
to, maybe there's one other part of this that I definitely want to get into as well in a second, that you don't think about how simple some of these joys can be. I tell you about something that exists in this fandom culture and you go, wonderful, amazing. Those are the words that come to mind when you're enjoying this kind of stuff. And I would say for the most part, past 10 years, you've been enjoying this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very enjoyable.
Now let's get into the best part. The adult entertainment sphere. Okay, so UNN has been involved in various ways, shapes, and forms with adult content.
Yes.
Has it not? Yes.
A little bit.
Interviews with stars, commentary about issues going on in those communities, things like that.
Yes.
Right? How the hell do you get a porn star for an interview?
A lot of your adult stars are on Twitter, or on, X.
There you go. There you go.
That's the main place.
And
it doesn't take much to figure out, which ones are legit and which ones are just bot pages and stuff. So, I will just hit somebody up, and again, it's almost like interviewing celebrities and cosplayers. 8 or 9 out of 10 will say no or won't even reply, but then you'll get one that's like, hey, that sounds like a good time. And that's basically how you go about it. Again, it takes the audience number, it takes manners, and you just go in there and, hey, rock and roll. And I've interviewed a handful of really awesome adult entertainers, and I'll tell you, aside from just 1 or 2 hiccups in that group, adult entertainers, in my opinion, give as good, if not better, interviews than most mainstream stars.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like they're like performance-wise, like I feel like it's just built into them.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the most fun interviews I've ever had were with adult stars, and a lot of those interviews we barely even touched on the adult word. Just fun people to talk to.
That was going to be my next question is, do you prepare differently for an adult star interview than you do for a singer? Because if you're interviewing a singer, you go back and you maybe watch their music videos and check out their discography. Did you ever find yourself beforehand just pouring through a channel on the black and orange YouTube, as one of my ex-girlfriends once called it?
I've never prepared for an adult star interview like that, mainly because I didn't have to. I'd already seen everything.
Certified Gooners on the channel.
Yeah, the Untitled Nerd Network.
No. Okay. Well, yeah. So that covers the most fun part of it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of different facets to UNN, and I think we've covered most of it. We've covered a lot of the who, what, when, where. We covered the stories, some of the highlights, some of the lowlights. However, it's not my story, and I may be missing some things. Is there anything we haven't talked about yet that needs to be in that camera there?
Just the fact that we've been doing this for 10 years, and...
Well, we covered that.
Well, yeah, but just to reiterate, we've been doing this for 10 years and have just been able to experience so many things. There are a lot of things, a ton of things. If not for this channel, I never would have been able to experience.
Yep.
And I think why we are successful as we are in those interviews is when I do those interviews, I don't want to just interview anybody. I'm not going to find somebody that I don't know and be like, oh, it's time to do some research and find out what this person's all about. When I go to a con, I look at the people that I personally want to talk to, because that's going to look better on camera than me trying to fumble my way through questions. And, you know, I like to be able to go in with just a brief little, maybe 5 or 6 point outline for a 40-minute interview, and then I'm jumping right in it. Like, hey, like, I've been wanting to talk to you since I was a kid. Let's do it. Yeah, I love it. Like, and that's the thing. This is fun. We wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't fun.
Sure.
You know, there's a little bit of, it's funny because one of the more irritating things about the page is having to ban people who misbehave and don't follow the rules, and
I feel like I'd get a kick out of that.
Want to insult people and stuff. That deep down is truly kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But I get that there's satisfaction there from hitting that block button.
Hit that block button.
Like, you know, that somebody writes like a 6-page thing about why we're horrible. I look at like the first line of it. Oh, it's that kind of comment. Ban, and then they're gone. Their comment's gone, and all of that was for nothing.
Yep.
And part of that just makes me feel so wonderful deep down inside. You know?
Oh yeah. Slamming the ban hammer against the people that maybe don't make the community what you want it to be.
Yeah. And I don't get rid of people just to get rid of people. You know, we want our community to thrive.
Yeah.
But it tends to attract their own kind of people sometimes, and we have to correct that.
You sound like the guy from
The Shining.
Yes.
Yep, that was what I was going for.
Okay, excellent.
It was like, and then more people showed up and started running their mouths at me, so I corrected them too.
As we stay in a nice old hotel, by the way.
That is true. This place has been around a minute.
Very good choice of venue for that reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you've told a lot of stories. Can I tell a story real quick? Do you remember how we met?
Yes.
The page.
Yeah. If it wasn't for UNN, you and I never would have crossed paths.
That is true.
That is interesting.
I would not. You'd have like 40% of the victory royales on Fortnite that you do now, if not for this link up right here.
We had to go there, didn't we?
That was like 18 kills Alex over here running the map.
Do you want to tell the story?
I'd love to tell the story.
Yeah, feel free.
At the time, I worked in Chattanooga, Tennessee for a radio station called Hits 96. And we did something with the artist Lizzo.
Yep.
And we did an event where we were one of the first stations in America to play her music. Not the very first, but we were the first on Truth Hurts, her big breakout single. And we had put on this event. It was packed house, filled out a venue. She was going to perform just a few songs and then do an interview. And I got a message on the station's Facebook page from this guy right here, which also shows you, by the way, kids, that outbound sales and cold outreach works.
Yeah.
Because I told you at that moment, hey, I can't get you in with Lizzo, because that was the request. Hey, can we do an interview with her backstage? Can't do anything for you with Lizzo, but let's keep you in mind. Lo and behold, I ended up meeting Lonnie and UNN for something I was doing on the show. I was doing a segment where I wanted to interview folks who never would have got a radio interview otherwise. Talked to a lot of rappers, a lot of singers, stuff like that. Those people were going to get plenty of interviews. They're bored of it by now. The idea was, let me get somebody who will never get a radio interview ever again after I'm done with them. And the segment was called Something Different. And for Something Different, I hit you up to do an interview about what it was like to run a meme page on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a meme page on Facebook interview ever since, so I think the idea stood pretty strong.
2019, by the way.
Yep. I brought my then girlfriend with me. She's a cosplayer, and you kind of gave her the opportunity to be in the cosplay competition that you were doing with the page.
Featured her a few times.
That's right. So it was a nice trade transaction at first, and a few conversations here and there about maybe streaming together or hanging out outside of work. And next thing you know, we have been a mutual thorn in each other's side for quite some time.
But I do want to, but before the interview wraps, I do want to kind of put a footnote on that.
Oh, yeah?
And that was the fact that we lived in the same town for a little over 6 months.
Yep.
when we knew each other.
Yep.
And you were always like, hey, let's get together, play Warzone, let's play some video games, let's get together. Here's the thing, in 2019, I was a different person.
Oh yeah.
I was not a social person. I didn't like getting together with people.
Yeah.
This was before COVID, and I got worse during COVID. But I was like, oh, we'll get together eventually. And then finally, around December, you hit me up. It was like, hey, I'm moving like 2 states away.
Yep.
And I was like, damn it. And so we've actually become better friends since you've moved out of town, so much so that we met like halfway.
Yep.
You know, you're in Colorado, I'm in Tennessee, and we met halfway in Jefferson City, Missouri, just to hang out for a few days. And I was like, you know what? It didn't even occur to me that if not for UNN, you and I never would have met.
Correct.
But that's only fitting that you're doing this interview now that I'm thinking about it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing the interview.
Not only am I the most talented interviewer he's ever met in his life, but yeah, we also met through the page. So
Yeah.
That's a more humble reason to have me sit here.
That's very, very neat. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, because I was like, if I wanted anybody to do this interview, it was going to be you.
Sure.
But in hindsight, now that I'm like, oh yeah, it was because of that.
That's why I wanted to tell that story real quick.
Wonderful. Thank you for putting that neat little nugget of knowledge in there, man.
Definitely. No, you've got a lot out of this experience. You have got memories. You have got friends.
Yep.
Because unfortunately, no matter how much you annoy me, we are going to be in contact, I would say, probably till one of us dies.
Yeah. Hopefully that's later. Right?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It may be at each other's hands after this camera goes off.
Yeah.
You never know. But you've got friends, you've got, it's got to be at this point billions of impressions on Facebook.
Yeah,
and
it is.
shared. Hopefully, may not be a full-throated laugh every time, but you've shared some chuckles with some people.
Mm-hmm.
You've shared stuff. You and Amber and everybody else who's been involved have hopefully brightened up a 15-minute bathroom break while somebody's scrolling through Facebook on many, many occasions, and putting out videos like this and doing live streams where people could get together, even if it wasn't the biggest crowd in the world. Your crowd was still both of those things. Yours and a crowd. And when you look back on it, some folks don't always have something that they can claim as their own. Everybody's looking for a legacy, right? UNN, one stupid meme at a time, is a legacy. How's that feel?
Never thought about it that way, man. But honestly, there's going to be thousands of people out there that when they think of me, UNN's going to be it.
Yep.
Like this is my project that people are going to, well, among other things, but we're not going to go in that direction.
We're not doing an interview about that just yet.
But yeah, and I'll tell you, this is something that I meant to say earlier, but one of the coolest things about running this page is when we do have a hot button post that gets a lot of opinions, and we get rid of the people who are being mean just to be mean. And I can't tell you, man, the number of comments, the number of private messages we've got where people are like, thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for giving us a peaceful place where we don't have to deal with insults, homophobic, transphobic remarks, people, just things like that. And to be able to give people something like that feels great. And,
Yeah, and to do it for so long, too.
Yeah, and I was telling people, we've got 200,000 followers. I was like, but I will whittle that down to like 300 people if that means maintaining a safe place for our audience.
Sure.
So...
Yeah, it was never about 200,000 followers.
Never was. It just happened that way.
Just happened to be something that other people believed in.
Because I'll tell you, I lost my mind when we hit 10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was big time.
Sure.
And now we're 20 times that.
Absolutely.
So, heck yeah. Yeah, like, from me to you, like, if you're watching this, if you've been a fan of ours, whether you joined up today or 10 years ago, we've got people who still maintain contact that were with us like the first year. We appreciate it, because it's just good to know that we're making a difference. That's the biggest thing.
There you go. Well, 10 years down and a lot more to go. And I think a pretty good recap of how you got there, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good conversation. Leave a comment or something if you've got something to add, but otherwise, I think this convo is over and a new one begins.
Hey, I'm just happy we made it through it as well as we did.
See you in 10 years.
Hopefully quicker than that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10
Okay.
years. All right. Thanks, man.
For sure.